The following program is a podcast1.com production.
Your healthy radio addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
Scattered pictures of the smiles we left behind, smiles we gave to one another for the way we were.
There's nothing to the Russia investigation. It's a waste of time. Look, I was there. It's a total and complete farce. Russian collusion is a farce.
This does not augur well for the president's legal strategy. And I think the thing that Bannon does have a first-hand knowledge of is the firing of Comey. And I'm sure Bob Mueller is going to be talking to him and many others around him about what he saw, what he knows about that specific issue.
They have phony witch hunts going against me. They have everything going.
Must you torture us, James, with Barbara Streisand? Oh, let's keep this music going, because doesn't it seem that these are misty water-colored memories? The unity of the last 3 months of the campaign, working together, slogging it out state after state, arm in arm. You're my pal. You're helping. It's Bannon. It's Kellyanne. It's the whole crew. It's Bossy. Well, I have a question, and you guys all know what I'm talking about at this point. This Michael Wolff book that's just coming out next week, where it's everybody dissing on everybody else. You know, my first question here: why on earth did the Trump people give people the green light? They gave Bannon and all of them the green light to work with Wolff. And in fact, Wolff parked himself in the West Wing. Yeah, he was allowed to tape interviews with people. I mean, they had a rocky start to this administration. We've talked about that. I wrote about it in Billionaire at the Barricades. By the way, a lot of people are telling me that they listened to the audiobook over vacation. I'm so glad people are doing that, because it took a long time to do, and it's really funny. It's really good. You're going to love the audiobook. A lot of people, like, I guess in the car or on the beach, people were telling me that on the beach listening to it, screaming, and also learning a lot. So thank you. Keep those emails and tweets coming about Billionaire at the Barricades, because when you read that, you will understand more about this current war of words, why it's happening, and how important it is for all of you to keep your eye on the prize. Now, the eye on the prize, in my view, is the Trump agenda. It is building the wall, a pragmatic, sensible foreign policy. It's America first. It's not me first. It's not singing in one key, me, 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 me. No. It's America first. It's the voters first, the taxpayers, our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence. And I'll tell you this, for all the, dissing on Trump, he doesn't read books, I got to say this. How many of you really care whether Trump sits down and reads books? I mean, yeah, it'd be nice, I guess, if he just had time and was a student of history and knew more about the Peloponnesian Wars. And you know what he knows about? As far as I can tell, he knows people. He knows the issues that drove the electorate to the polls. He knows what it takes to get America going again. Is he a unique personality with his own quirks and his own faults? Yes, he is. Is he like everybody else in that regard? Yes, he is. Does he have flaws? You bet. Do I have flaws? You bet. All of us do. But the back and forth, the war of words, what Bannon is saying and then what Trump is saying. And think about, I was thinking about, and I said this last night on The Angle. We have an unbelievable show on tap for tonight, by the way. You want to tune in, DVR us. A lot of you are DVRing and watching in the morning. I prefer you watch live. Come on, if I can live on 5 hours of sleep every night, you can, or 4, whatever it is, you can watch me late. But the more I thought about this, I thought about the great struggles of our forefathers. And foremothers. I don't want to offend everybody. Foremothers. Is that what we have to say now? Four people? Well, I was thinking about that George Washington 18-mile march with the soldiers to take on 8,000 of General Cornwallis's troops. And it was 240 years ago, yesterday, the Battle of Princeton. Bitter cold, 18 miles in the darkness to take them on, ultimately defeat them, re-energize the troops, imbue them with a new sense of confidence and optimism, putting country, which was at that point still a fledgling republic, putting country and freedom and our belief in love and independence ahead of self. Now, how many of you have been really hurt by someone you love? All of us have been. I certainly have been. I know a lot of you have been. I truly believe that Steve Bannon loves Donald Trump as a person. Not that he loves everything about him, but he loves the fact that he stepped up when everybody said he would fail. And in his own way, Trump fought really hard for the country. Again, unconventional, brash, in your face. But I believe that Steve Bannon loves the fact that Donald Trump did that. And so you have to love the person. You can love the person and not love everything about the person. Or think, well, you could have done this differently. Maybe you shouldn't have, no one should have met with a Russian lawyer. Although it's not treason or it's ridiculous. But but you don't love everything they did, but you love the person. So he could be hurt personally. And I'm not even saying that's what's motivating him, but he could be hurt personally by what he thinks are the mistakes of people around the president himself, parting ways with the White House in August. That hurts. When you part ways, it hurt. It's hurtful. People like Reince Priebus, Sean Spicer. You don't think they gave it their all? They did. Did they do everything right? No, they didn't. But guess what? I wouldn't have done everything right if I had been in there in some kind of communications role. I'm sure I would have screwed things up too. But I get back to this. I get back to this point, and I'm going to try to keep my eye on the prize here. Keeping the eye on the prize here is your belief that the establishment screwed up this country royally, empowered the Chinese communists to have an outsized influence across the globe, and probably the far reaches of the globe. They're there. They have more influence. They have more money. They have more prestige, even though they do much more in the way of tampering with and hacking into systems than Russia ever did, and have much bigger military, standing army, all the rest, economic influence. But the establishment created that monster of an economic military force, but through their bad policies. Donald Trump is going to right that ship. Well, he's working hard to. I have big news on the China front, by the way, which I'm going to get to. Taylor, don't let me forget. I have there 2 big updates on China that a friend of mine emailed me this morning, and I got to get that out to you. It's really important. We're going to talk to the acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Is there a reason why people are still acting a year in? Why is he still acting? I always think acting. He's playing the role. The understudy tonight will be, the role of the ICE director tonight will be played by acting. How do you have acting in January of 2018? It's ridiculous. Got to get these people confirmed. You know who also has to get confirmed is Rick Grinnell to be confirmed as Germany ambassador to Germany. Sometimes early in the morning my phrasing will get bollocks, but you know what I'm saying. All these people have to get confirmed. Oh, we're going to have Roger Stone on? Good. Nice booking. Can't wait to hear what he says about the intrigue. But why give interviews to Michael Wolff? I guess they thought that Michael Wolff had been kind of friendly with Roger Ailes. He was going to do kind of a fair, it might be tough, but it's going to be a fair look at the strengths of Trump. Some of the missteps, but the real strengths of the Trump team. What are they thinking? And I understand it from my sources that Michael Wolff was interviewing these key players, and I know this from one of the sources of the book, all the way through October. So they were updating this book until October. That's like Billionaire at the Barricades. I was doing edits in August, and the thing was out early October. That just, in the book publishing world, that's a real push. Why would they do that? I wouldn't have spent any time with people who are in the business of just selling books. And I look back on this. Michael Wolff's not a conservative, obviously. I look back on this and I think, I cut out like major sections of my book just because they were private conversations. They weren't off the record that I had with the president, that I had with key members of the president's team. I mean, things that maybe before I die I'll write about, but not when Trump is still alive. I won't do it. And I see all these people writing books, and I can't speak to the Michael Wolff thing, but I see all these people writing books about private conversations. Like, I don't do that. And I sell more books. Maybe I could have sold more books. Again, this is Washington. This is why I feel like half the time I should be living in Colorado. Because I've lived here, but I don't feel like I'm of Washington. Because the focus, if you're in this town and you're involved in politics, or you're part of the conservative media, your focus, of course you want to make some money, but your focus should be, how do we save this country for future generations? Michael Wolff is not going to help us save the country for future generations. Michael Wolff's goal is to sow division and discord and give ammunition to the left, the impeach Trump media. That's what Michael Wolff wants to do. So why did the communications team in the White House give the thumbs up to all these people to speak to him? Including after they left the White House, they were able to speak to him. I do not understand that. 855-40-LAURA. But you see my take on this. Who does this benefit? I don't think it benefits Bannon. And by the way, Bannon on Breitbart Radio, we have a little snippet of what he seemed to want to tamp down concern that there is any separation between the president and his agenda and Bannon/Breitbart. Let's listen.
The President of the United States is a great man. I support him day in and day out, whether going through the country, given the Trump miracle speech, or on the show or on the website. So I don't think you have to worry about that.
Yeah, we're perhaps going to have Bannon on tomorrow, by the way. I'm working on that. But you see where this is. You see where this is going. The left, oh my gosh, the left has had a field day with this for the last 24 hours. Now this is Bob Mueller. This means Bob Mueller is going to have more fodder in an investigation, by the way, that's flagging because there's no evidence, as far as I can tell, of any collusion, of any attempt by Trump to work with the Russians to undermine the electoral process and all the stuff that they were alleging. I don't see any evidence of that. If we knew there was, it would have been out by now. They had Michael Flynn and a vice grip, and they have Carter Page and all that. But how does this advance the Trump agenda? Do you think Trump should have even responded to Bannon? And do you think these people should be speaking out? Now, if you're an American citizen, and I guess taking the other side, if you're an American citizen and you see what you believe to be a crime being committed, well, that's different. If you thought that a crime was committed, and Bannon did use the word treasonous and unpatriotic. Now, you throw around that word treasonous, that's serious. But how is it treasonous to take a meeting with someone? I don't see that. Would I have taken that meeting? I don't believe I would have. Do I think it's treasonous to take a meeting? No, I don't.
The treasonous comment is absolutely ridiculous. If Steve said that, he should get on the air. He should come on your show today and take it back, because there's nobody less treasonous than Don Jr. There's nobody more patriotic. Perhaps the president is more patriotic than Don Jr., but that's about it. But to say somebody is treasonous and doing something against the interests of the United States because they took a meeting is absolutely ridiculous.
855-40-LAURA. Well, I have to say, we're going to take a break. Your reaction to this. Whose agenda does this advance? Does this help the America First initiative? Or does it hurt? And I think most people, they just want this economy to keep humming. This is all white noise, but the media will feed on this for some time. 855-40-LAURA. A lot more to get to, including a potential DACA deal, my fears about that, and why the establishment is circling Donald Trump. Don't go away.
For hardworking Americans, there's just not enough time in the day. Freshly has made my insane day manageable and saved me a ton of time. Freshly is the easiest way to eat healthier without any of the work. They deliver fresh prepared meals straight to your door, so you can skip that annoying line at the grocery store and the mess after dinner. These meals have given me so much more time to focus on the things that matter. The meals are made fresh in the USA by hardworking Americans like yourself. All you have to do is heat them up, and your meal is ready to eat in under 3 minutes. It's foolproof, and it's like having a personal chef do all the work for you. Go to Freshly.com/Laura, and you'll get 40% off. That's 20% off each of your first 2 orders of chef-cooked meals, plus free shipping. That's Freshly.com/LAURA for 40% off and free shipping. Or use code Laura at checkout.
So far away from so far, I just can't see.
Bannon, who is one of the rare people in the White House who has not been tarred by the Russia investigation, has made a determination that the White House, that Donald Trump's going down, and that he believes that the place to be historically, to be on the right side of history, is to be criticizing the president, the president's children, the closest people to the president besides himself, in the starkest possible terms.
All I can tell you is this. There was no collusion. There was no nothing. It's a disgrace.
Well, we learn now that this Michael Wolff character, which for some reason they thought was a good idea to chronicle the White House, he was granted access to the White House 20 times. Oh, that's all. Just 20 times. But apparently he just parked himself in the Oval Office. Is that right? In the Oval Office, the West Wing? It's a little late for this, but the White House is banning staff from using personal mobile phones at work. Is banning its employees from using personal mobile phones while at work, despite concerns among some staffers that they'll be cut off from children. Well, why don't the children use the work line? Why? Okay, hold on a second. I think Trump is absolutely smart to do that. I would have done that a year ago. A year ago, James, do you remember this? Taylor, you might remember it. A year ago, we wrote a big piece on LifeZette and also talked about it on the show when the leaks started coming from the transition. It was before the inauguration. The transition leaks started coming out. And remember when that David Ignatius column was written that clearly had all this national security information in it about the call to the Russians? We said, what? How the heck is that? And we knew that conversations were being monitored either by the State Department people who transcribed them.
Yeah, the Australia conversation. I remember that, sure.
Right. And when that started happening and it was obvious people within the Oval Office and the West Wing, were leaking, that's the time to have taken away the personal cell phones. How many of you think that's a good idea? Long overdue. The kids can call the work cell phone. They have work cell phones, as if the kids can't call that. It's ridiculous. By the way, it snowed 1 millimeter in the Washington area, so school was canceled for the whole day. I'm not kidding you. 1 millimeter of snow. You can't even use a yardstick. You can't even measure it. And they canceled everything. I better run out and get some toilet paper and milk now. Coming up, the director of ICE, who's still acting. Don't go away.
To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe.
We're not backing off anything, and including meeting the needs of protecting our border. We're not going to turn this country into a reign of terror, of domestic enforcement, and have the DACA, the dreamers, pay that price.
We came to an agreement. The right wing attacked and he backed off. He cannot let a fringe wing of the Republican Party run the show, or his presidency will not accomplish anything. And that's the greatest rap against him, even with his supporters.
The unreachable star.
Well, When I think of people to give Donald Trump advice on how to be a successful president, call me crazy, but Chuck Schumer doesn't pop to the top of the list. Because we know Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi just want this administration to be successful. Because that will be good for their electoral future. They want Trump to fail. They want him out. They want him impeached. They want him gone. And this DACA deal we're going to talk about, give you updates about what's happening on the border. A lot of you reacted last night to the segment I did on the Ingraham angle, where we had a serious conversation about what's at stake for America if this administration does a deal that on paper might look fine, but that in practice doesn't really result in the type of enforcement that and reforms that will preserve and protect that America First goal of his. Our freedom, our sovereignty, independence, rule of law, all the things that we love and believe in. Joining us now, I'm delighted he's with us, Acting Immigration Customs Enforcement Director Tom Homan. And I think it's good to say ICE Director, the weather that we've been having. Director Homan. What do I call you? Director Homan? Tom? What do you want me to call you?
Well, officially, they call me the deputy director. Since I've been nominated, I can't carry the title of director any longer. So I appreciate you having me, though.
Absolutely. So let's talk about where we are. First, before we get into this DACA issue, where we are on the border, because last night I reported that we have seen a real uptick in the number of unaccompanied minors crossing the border in October and November, and it looks like in anticipation of some type of amnesty deal where they know that the kids aren't going to be deported and they'll be able to stay here, and the number was over 7,000 individuals. Can you tell us about that, sir?
Well, I can look. The increase on the border right now has to do with two groups. It's mainly unaccompanied alien children and family groups. And you're exactly right. Look, whenever we talk about a DACA deal, whenever we talk about some sort of benefit coming, people want to rush to get here and try to take advantage of anything that may be coming. So that's always been an issue. And another reason why these numbers are up is that we have some court rulings, out of the Ninth Circuit that limit how long ICE can detain a family unit or detain a UAC. And that's a couple of weeks ago, we sent a list of policy changes and legislative proposals up to the Hill, CIS, myself, and CBP, saying, here's the things we need to fix this. We need these legislative changes. We need the changes in law to the Unaccompanied Alien Children, the Trafficking Victims Act. We need changes to some of these policies or some of these decisions by the Ninth Circuit on how long we detain families. Look, if there's no consequence and no deterrence to them entering the country illegally, why would they stop? So we're asking for these changes.
So right now, Tom, when you have people who cross the border, they cross over because we don't have fencing everywhere. We obviously don't have a wall. We only have that gatekeeper wall near San Diego. So let's say they get across. Maybe it's a mother with a small child. They present themselves, usually, correct, to Border Patrol officials, and then they are detained generally for how long?
Right now, the average detention is about 2 weeks. The latest litigation, we say we can detain them up to 20 days, but again, if you're talking 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that's really the price of doing business, right? They'll get in our facility, we'll feed them 3 squares a day, we'll clothe them, they'll get their shots, they'll get their medical review, then they get released. So until we can, when we first started this back in FY14, when we were detaining these people until they got the final orders removal, and we put them on planes and sent them home, the numbers dropped in the toilet. But now we got our hands tied by these decisions, and it's just, again, it's a cost doing business. Spend 3 weeks in an ICE facility and get fed 3 squares a day and get released. So that's why there's various policies we sent up to the Hill a couple weeks ago. We're asking for changes in these decisions, because if these decisions remain, it's going to be tough to stop this.
Who on the Hill is a strong ally of this change where you can do expedited removals, expedited enforcement at the border? We want more agents. We want more immigration judges, all these things that have to be done. Who's one of your strongest allies on your policy proposals?
I hate to call anyone out because we got a lot of strong allies now. Chairman McCall is very strong supporter of us. We got Chairman Johnson. We got people that really want to do the right thing. Another thing I want to make clear when we talk about, I know you mentioned the border wall earlier. Let's talk about what happened this year under this president. You're going to like or love this president, but his policies on southwest border had made sense this year. They had a 45-year low in illegal alien crossings this year. That's not by accident. That's not by coincidence. That's because this president has let the Border Patrol and the men and women of ICE do their job. Not one foot of wall went up, and not one more Border Patrol agents on that border, but the number went down to a 45-year low. Why? Because we're finally increasing interior enforcement. There can be no border control unless there's a strong interior enforcement. As long as people think they can get by the Border Patrol or they get released from detention because they play the system, never to be looked at again, and to get into the shadows, you're never going to fix the problem. That's why we need to really push interior enforcement. And the president letting ICE do its job this year had a significant impact. So hats off to this president. And that's why these court decisions, every time we make a positive impact, a court decision comes out or a temporary restraining order comes out that ties our hands again. That's why we need these changes on the Hill so we can continue the great impact we made. And I want to make one thing clear. I'm not saying we don't need a wall. I started my career in the Border Patrol. I was in San Diego when there was thousands of aliens arrested every shift.
I remember.
And they built a barrier. They built a border wall.
96, baby. That was good. That worked.
Exactly. Every place they built the wall, it has worked.
Yep.
So why would we not want the wall? What price do you put on national security and public safety? So we do need the wall, and we need interior enforcement. And this president's letting us do it. He has the right idea, and I salute him for that.
We're talking to a deputy ICE director, Tom Homan, who's had 30 years in law enforcement, nearly 30 years in immigration enforcement. And I would love to see that list of the policy proposals you sent over to Capitol Hill, if you could share that with us offline, because
okay.
I want to understand what you need and what's most important. I also want to add.
Most important for me right now, Laura, is sanctuary cities. I mean, I was on Fox the other day and gave some talking points on sanctuary cities. Of course, I'm taking a lot of heat today from the liberal media and the sanctuary city mayors. But I want to make one thing perfectly clear.
Yeah.
Everything I said about sanctuary cities, I stand by. These liberal mayors can come out and say whatever they want, but they can't argue the fact that knowingly and intentionally releasing a public safety threat back into the public to reoffend is just stupid. It's wrong. And why are we doing this? Why are they putting roadblocks up so ICE can't do their jobs? ICE is trying to enforce the laws enacted by Congress and signed by the president. And we're not going to stop doing it. And the story this morning that I threatened to increase resources, I didn't threaten, I promised. I'm going to increase enforcement resources in the state of California. Because if I can't arrest a dangerous criminal in the safety and security of county jail, I have to go arrest them in the street. And one person not going to do that. It's dangerous work to arrest somebody in their homes would have access to weapons. So I have to increase resources in California. And I want to add one more thing to this. The politicians say they're protecting the immigrant communities by having sanctuary city policies. Let me make one thing clear. If I can't arrest a bad guy in the safety and security of a county jail, I'm going to have to go arrest him at a home or in place of employment. When I do that, we're going to find other illegal aliens there, most likely, that weren't even on our radar, but now are on our radar, and we're going to arrest them. So what they've done with these sanctuary city policies, they put the immigrant community at greater risk of being arrested by ICE agents. So it's all smoke and mirrors.
Well, we're talking to the deputy ICE director who's giving us lots of information and details about the practical needs and resources and facts of what's happening in enforcement and at the border. The Sacramento mayor, Darrell Steinberg, he said in response to your comments that these politicians should be arrested for thwarting federal law and also releasing these criminal elements into society. He said, well, they certainly know where to find me. I know how to deal with bullies. Stand your ground and stand with the people. That's what we'll continue to do in Sacramento. Is there a shred of civility, dignity, or intelligence left in the president or in this administration? Your response to him is?
I mean, really? I mean, is he standing by the people? Is he standing by the American citizen taxpayers who are victimized by criminal aliens being released to the street, for God's sakes? And look, and here's what it comes down to. If you don't like the immigration laws, then change it. But you can't ignore the law. You can't choose to turn a blind eye to it. You can't knowingly release a public safety threat back into the public. Let's use Cook County, Chicago as an example. The highest crime rate the city's ever had, right? Are they doing everything they can to protect their citizens? No, because in Cook County, an ICE officer isn't allowed to access the Cook County jail to take custody of somebody that's in the country illegally that committed yet another crime against a citizen in this country. A person that we could arrest and could remove not only from the community but remove from the country.
But would you arrest these politicians? Could you arrest them on what statute?
Here's what I've asked. Here's my statement that was kind of taken out of context. Here's what I have said. There's a statute called it's an alien smuggling statute. It's called 8 U.S.C. 1324, and in that statute, if you read it, it's illegal to harbor, shield from detection someone that's here illegally from federal law enforcement. What I've asked the Department of Justice to do is look at these sanctuary city policies. Some are worse than others, but are they violating that statute? When ICE officer goes to a county jail and says, we know this person's illegally in the United States, he's in the jail, we want access to him, we want to take custody of him when he gets released from your custody.
Let's start arresting
if someone's going to put a roadblock on that, let's do that. Are they shielding and protecting these people?
Well, of course they are.
Yeah, so I've asked DOJ to look at that, and you tell me if that's a violation of the statute, and if it is, hold them accountable. Politicians in sanctuary cities can't keep acting with impunity and not be held responsible.
I will say, Deputy Director Homan, that your analysis of what is happening with the family units currently crossing the border and an increased number, and these unaccompanied minors crossing the border, they're doing it because they believe they can game the system. Ditto for the sanctuary city politicians. They're doing it to cater to a Latino, predominantly or Asian illegal immigrant population, and they're doing it because they're like, well, make me stop. Until you actually, it's like with a kid, and unless you actually follow through on a threat and punishment. You know, I have 3 kids. They'll keep doing what they're doing. You got to follow through.
Yeah, well, what I've said in the 33 years I've been doing this, if there's no consequence to deterrence to illegal activity, why would it stop? I mean, I can't blame anybody for wanting to be a part of the greatest country on earth, but you can't be a part of the greatest country on earth and not respect its laws. You can't have it both ways, at least not anymore. And that's the way it should be. And in the statement I made in my interview, this isn't the America I grew up in. Sanctuary cities didn't exist in the America I grew up in. People stood by the rule of law. People respected the rule of law, and people respected the brave men and women that strapped a gun to their hip every day to protect their communities. It's an attack on the laws of this country. It's an attack on common sense, and I'm going to continue to enforce the law without apology. And the men and women of ICE, they're American patriots all the way, because despite what these politicians and media say about them, they get up every day and do their duty, and we're going to continue doing that.
The Secretary of Homeland Security, Christian Nielsen, said the president's planned wall along the border with Mexico is first and foremost of any deal. My concern about this is that the down payment, which Congress would okay, that's like piddly stuff. That's like $1.6 billion. And to me, that adds up to a big goose egg in the end. If they agree to a DACA deal without doing the things like more immigration judges, more Border Patrol agents, more interior enforcement, the chain migration, the visa lottery, do you think we're going to be back to 1986 and the Simpson-Mazzoli mistake that Reagan made, and we'll just have more and more and more people coming in?
I'll say this: I was here in '86 during that time. If you're going to do any sort of thing on DACA or anything like that, where you're talking amnesty, whatever you're talking about, look, you got to have a strong interior enforcement. You got to take away the magnets that drive illegal immigration, and we got to make it hard for them to get a job. That's why I've told my staff here to increase worksite enforcement operation by 400%. We got to take that magnet away on on them getting a job. We gotta start holding people responsible for violating those laws of this country. You know, I took a lot of heat from my last testimony where I said, you know, if you're in the country illegally, you should be concerned. You should look over your shoulder. You're damn right. You can't violate the laws of this country and think it's okay. It's not okay. If you and I speed down a highway, we're concerned we're going to get a speeding ticket. We lie on our taxes, we're concerned we'll get an audit. If you enter this country illegally, which is a crime, 8 U.S.C. 1325. If you enter this country illegally, you should be concerned. You should be looking over your shoulder. So I would say we need some changes. We need a strong interior enforcement. Do you think,
Deputy Director, that the amnesty should be immediate, or should it only come, some type of regular status, only come after a period of real verifiable enforcement?
I think you can't give anything without getting some sort of an enforcement deal. The national security and public safety of this country should be paramount to anything.
Yeah, well, I think we really appreciate all your time. Thank you so much, Tom Homan. I have closing thoughts on this when we return. Don't go away. There must be consequences for the thwarting of federal law. I say on the pot issue, legalizing marijuana, the push to harbor illegal immigrants, there's got to be consequences, or guess what? The little babies, the little brats will keep misbehaving. I love it.
Your Healthy Radio Addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
Come on, take a little walk with me, baby, and tell me, who do you love? Who do you love?
First the fire, now the fallout, following a broadside by Steve Bannon. Overnight, a lawyer for the president blasting Bannon for breaching a non-disclosure agreement, sending this cease and desist letter warning legal action is imminent. But Bannon saying he still backs his old boss.
The President of the United States is a great man. You know, I support him day in and day out.
You are listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA, dominating the news cycle. Not the 250,000 jobs added in December, of course, beating the approximation that some were making around the 200,000, 190,000 level. Huge. Job cut announcements are the lowest since 1999. The Dow has hit 25,000. Oh my gosh, if you're just someone who put money in an index fund, even $1,000, you're feeling really good right now. Just put it in an index fund. This economy is doing great. There'll probably be a correction, but it's doing great. And that really should be what we're focused on, how tax reform is going to improve the lives of more Americans, how in a month, when people really start seeing the increase in their take-home pay, they're going to start liking Trump a lot more. That's why we need happy, calm voters going into 2018. The media and the enemies of the America First agenda want to keep this drumbeat up. They want to keep this acrimony, backbiting, war of words. Where will it end? Steve Bannon thinks Don Trump committed treason, and Don Trump Jr. committed treason, and the Russian lawyer must have been sitting down with Trump. Well, Bannon he didn't take back his words, but today he said in an interview that was released from his radio network, he said, look, we're as tight as ever. I go across the country talking about the Trump miracle, and on these policies, no one's going to separate us. I like that approach better than this is what I think or speculate as to who talked to whom and what Mueller might do to Jared Kushner. None of that accomplishes anything. I talked about this on the Ingraham angle last night. It is not helpful to the Trump agenda. By the way, Ed Rollins spoke out yesterday. Of course, he heads up one of the super PACs to support the Trump agenda. And he wasn't too happy about these developments. Let's listen.
Well, he set himself on fire in the middle of the South Lawn, and the president ran over him with a tank and put it in reverse and backed over him again. I've never seen anybody do anything as stupid as he did in this interview, where he attacks the president's family. this year of extreme accomplishments, it was not Bannon, it was not Priebus, it was nobody else, it was him. And I think that's what Bannon found out today, and why he came out with a stupid statement attacking the president, who no one ever heard of Bannon before Trump got elected. I think it's the end of Bannon.
Well, Trump said in response to those excerpts of the book where Steve Bannon came out very critical of Don Jr. and Jared, and saying basically Trump must have known about this Russia meeting, that Steve, when he lost his job, he didn't just lose his job, he lost his mind. He's not at the core of my support. He doesn't represent the Trump electorate. I do. It's sad. I mean, it's sad to see it. I'm not going to spend the whole show on it. I know some people want me to, but I'm not going to spend the whole show on it. And Scaramucci made a point, by the way. I'll play a few more of these sound bites, guys, but Scaramucci, in that first soundbite from Good Morning America, he responded to this scuttlebutt in the Michael Wolff book that all these people, I love this, all these people say Trump is dumb. Like, they in different ways. Again, a lot of these quotes are secondhand quotes. They're not directly attributed to the so-called speaker. They're something that someone else said that the speaker said in the Wolff book. He does his sourcing in a very, let's say, liberal fashion, how he sources things. Now, I'm not saying none of the things were said. Maybe they were. They say that, for instance, people like McMaster, the national security advisor, Cohen, Gary Cohen, even Rupert Murdoch had said unflattering things about the president's intelligence. And Scaramucci shot back at that. Let's listen.
You cannot be dumb to win the American presidency. You know he's not dumb. I know he's not dumb. In fact, if anything, he's got probably the best emotional intelligence in terms of sizing and reading people. And he got Steve Bannon right. And he basically declared that yesterday for everybody. He probably felt that way privately about him, and he was trying to keep the peace because he'd like to keep the coalition of the Republican Party together. But when you have a lone wolf like that operating rogue against the president's interests, he had no choice but to do what he did yesterday.
Well, the idea that Donald Trump is stupid is what they've been trying to sell now for 2.5 years, or even longer. I go back to when Trump was talking about the birth certificate. He's a dummy, he's stupid, he's just a showman. That's all. Okay, well, if he's dumb, if Trump is really so stupid and out of his depth, what does that say about all the other people who couldn't beat him? They love that. All these people, well, Trump's dumb. Well, guess what? He defied your stupid predictions that he couldn't win. He crossed the country in a courageous and I think an unrelenting way, selling the message of America first, defying the critics, refusing to bow down every time they thought he should apologize. He did that, and all the while they were saying he can't win, he's destroying the Republican Party, the establishment will eat him alive, Jeb will beat him, Rubio will beat him, Cruz will beat him, the McMuffin will beat him, there'll be a challenge in the convention, right? They'll say the convention, they're going to be a contested convention. All the experts, all the smart people. Trump's not smart, but because he doesn't read John Meacham's history books, he's not smart. Well, maybe he's not smart, and he's not smart in the way that they think is most important. And I'm not saying that's not important to read history or understand history. I'd like to think I understand history pretty well, but I know a lot of smart people that make the dumbest decisions. A lot of the most credentialed people, gone to the best schools, have all the alphabet after their last name, PhD, JD, MA, MBA. People I would never want to run the country, and people who would sell America out for the highest bidder. Sell out our interests, sell out our borders, sell out our future prosperity. If they could make a buck, they would sell it out. So they're smart in a way, I guess. Not the smart I want. Your reaction to that, Trump is not smart. He's a dummy. He's an intellectually incapable. He doesn't read enough. Who's smarter? The guy who said, I can win Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Ohio, and Florida, by the way, and just watch me. Or the people who said he never could. 855-40-LAURA. We'll get into this with Roger Stone, the media feeding frenzy on the war of words between the top advisor to Donald Trump and his campaign and in the White House and the president himself as the establishment rallies to Trump after Bannon's quotes in this new book. Roger Stone will give us his analysis and a lot more. 855-40-LAURA.
Little child, won't you dance with me?
He's a child. He's got no attention span. He reads nothing. Bob Corker saying they're running an adult daycare center there. That sort of talk that you've heard from senior Republicans has actually now been confirmed in this book by a lot of people. But we've all heard it, but nobody had the guts to say it on the record. And, of course, some people are going to push back.
Joe Scarborough on Morning Mika today. Donald Trump is stupid. This is the line he's been trying to sell ever since President Trump called out the phonies at Morning Joe a year ago plus. And they've been on a crusade to undermine him. There's nothing Trump could ever do that would win the approval of the likes of the Manhattan set. And indeed, that's not how Donald Trump won, catering to the people who live in Manhattan. Although he's from Manhattan. It's a funny thing when a guy from Manhattan who came from the entertainment and commercial real estate industry was able to better discern the thinking and the dreams and aspirations of the American people than the so-called smart people in politics and media and business and beyond. So if that's the kind of intelligence that wins you elections and advances this type of agenda, then I'll take that intelligence over the so-called intelligence of the smart set on the coast any day. Joining us now, Roger Stone, political operative, world-renowned speaker, New York Times best-selling author. He joins us now. I'm delighted he's with us. Happy New Year, Roger. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Laura. Many thanks for having me on.
Always love it. Okay, your take. Bannon, Trump, war of words.
Well, sadly, I must reach the conclusion that if Steve said everything attributable to him, and that's a big if because the author Michael Wolff has a bad reputation for fabrication. He has fabricated things about me in the past in some of his writing. Mm-hmm. But putting that aside, it just shows me that Steve really doesn't understand Donald Trump. Which is not surprising because he supported Ted Cruz early and came to the Trump banner only late. Now, I like Steve Bannon. He's a friend of mine. We don't see eye to eye on everything, but we have probably a closer worldview than most. But it's important to understand that in Trump world, there is no Karl Rove. There never was. Donald Trump is not a confection. He's not a career politician. He's not a public figure reading talking points written by someone else. So therefore, just even calling yourself chief strategist is somewhat of a misnomer because Donald Trump is his own chief strategist. He's also his own speechwriter, his own phrase maker, his own press secretary in many senses. And he's obviously very good at it because he took on the well-oiled Clinton machine and the mainstream media that was working hand in glove with them, and against all odds, he defeated them. So it's disappointing, I guess I would say. The irony, of course, is that this book comes out at a time where between the collapse of the credibility of the Mueller probe, based on the many emails and texts that prove that this is just a partisan hit squad, a soaring economy, record stock market, unemployment at all-time lows, even with the phony counting system they have, and the president on a high. I've heard of kicking a man when he's down. Very rarely have I seen anybody kick a man when he's up.
Well, I think that's the whole point. I mean, the book was timed to come out in January. But the thing that I find so shocking about this is it doesn't help Donald Trump. It doesn't help him. And it doesn't help Steve Bannon. And it doesn't help advance the conservative populist agenda. I mean, I said this last night on TV. I don't see it.
Fratricide is a bad idea. And if Trump supporters want to form the firing squad in a circle, it would be to their detriment. I mean, look, we can understand Joe Scarborough. The sad truth is, during the entire time he was in Congress, Joe Scarborough talked about running for president. Joe Scarborough assured his successor for the congressional seat that he would run for president. When Donald Trump was nominated, Joe Scarborough thought Joe Scarborough, should have been nominated. When Donald Trump chose Mike Pence for vice president, Joe Scarborough thought Joe Scarborough should be vice president. What you see is an example of jealousy and bitterness, where you have Joe and Mika, who previously were brown-nosing the president like there was no tomorrow. Indeed, Dina Habib Powell gets her job improbably in a Trump White House on the recommendation of Mika Brzezinski. Never did understand that. Now they've turned on the president, but it's all out of personal pique. The president's dumb. The president's non-compos mentis. The president's mentally unstable. No, Joe, you're the one who's mentally unstable.
Well, I have friends who actually worked for him, and let's just say the idea of Trump being someone who's impatient and doesn't tolerate fools and unnecessary delays, and can lose his cool sometimes. Try to do the wrong thing around Scarborough and see what happens to you. And look, I'm not saying I'm any walk in the park either, by the way, Roger. But at least I admit it. I hold the bar really high for people, and then I love them up. But come on, I mean, this Scarborough is. And I love how Scarborough, by the way, was saying, well, the president's not being honest with the American people, and he's in all these closed door meetings. We don't know who he's meeting with at his golf course. And meanwhile, they kept their relationship secret over there at MSNBC for how long? Denying that they were a romantic item and pulling the wool over the eyes of the viewers and pretending it was this innocent romantic interplay or exchange. Come on.
Well, what's interesting is you watch them on TV in the mornings, and I do, because it's always good to know what the enemy's doing.
Yeah.
When Joe is speaking to Trump via camera, look at the look on Mika's face. It is a look of sheer hatred. It is just, it's
hatred of
chilling.
Joe or Trump?
It's so icy.
Hatred of Joe or Trump? Just kidding.
Well, no, hatred of Trump.
I know, I'm just teasing.
Although anything is possible.
Yeah.
Look, here's what people cannot get their head around. Yes, Donald Trump is an eccentric. Yes, he does things his way. Yes, he is not like every other president that you can think of who was packaged, who was fabricated, who was being handed, polling and focus groups and discussions of how to say things that would make you popular. He's more like Andrew Jackson. He's genuine. He's authentic. He's real. Yeah, he's got a temper, no question about it. He also got himself elected president, which, to my knowledge, is probably the only real estate magnate who's ever done that, against enormous odds by taking on the two-party duopoly and the elites of both parties who have, let's face it, run the country into the ground. He's a genius. But unfortunately, Steve Bannon does not be able to see that, because I think Steve is looking for the old mold. Perhaps he thought because the president can sometimes be unsophisticated about politics, that's fair to say, that Steve, could act as a de facto president. But the sad truth is, the president settled on his issue agenda for this campaign, immigration, the wall, revitalizing the economy, and so on, long before Steve Bannon joined the entourage. It is Trump who came up with the Make America Great agenda. No one else.
Roger Stone, it is so great to have you on. Come back soon. Happy New Year. Just love your analysis, and we cherish the fact that you join us so regularly. Thank you so much. We'll take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show. Senator Rand Paul will stop by. This DACA deal and the trap being set.
Hi, this is Ben Domenech, the host of the Federalist Radio Hour. We're a daily show coming to you 5 days a week from Washington, D.C., where we interview our nation's top journalists, politicians, authors, chefs, economists, entertainers, and more. If you're looking for a contrarian discussion on news, politics, or culture, give us a listen and subscribe at podcastone.com, the new Podcast One app, or at Apple Podcasts.
If he says, we'll do DACA amnesty for an end to chain migration and the full funding of the wall, for instance, would you support that?
Absolutely not. If he wants to keep his job, he needs to extend DACA.
So you would deny them legal status because you're so desperate to get the uncles, aunts, cousins, third removed into the country? Are you kidding me?
Let me say this.
That's amazing to me.
No, look, this is the way that we have to frame the answer. I agree with the majority of Americans who say, let's pass a clean DREAM Act. That includes a path to
Okay, well, your party isn't in control. The Republican Party is in control, so that's kind of reality.
And you guys
that's reality.
I know.
Oh, that was my guest last night on Fox, who was a nice guy, but I mean, I was stunned. So you get even if you got amnesty for all these people, you wouldn't agree to that because you're desperate to bring in entire genealogical charts into the country for various families. That's wild. I mean, to me, that really does say it all. Here you have Trump willing to come to the table. When Republicans have the House, Senate, and the White House, what they could say is, guess what? Build the wall, and then we'll talk. A lot of us, frankly, would prefer that. We're going to do the following 5 things. We're going to end chain migration, visa lottery gone. We're going to cut the number of green card holders by half. We're going to defund sanctuary cities. The wall is coming. You guys got to you either fund this wall or guess what? We're not going to do business with Congress and the executive branch. But you're going to start funding this wall. He could do that. Now, might not get the money for the wall, but he could do a lot. And instead he said, no, I want to work with Congress. I'll work with both parties. And what he gets, and what he's going to get from Chuck Schumer, I believe, if he sticks to his principles, he'll get the big brush off from Schumer. That's an if. Trump cannot compromise on the wall. Do you agree he can compromise on the wall? And do you believe $1.6 billion is enough for the wall? By the way, if you end this scourge of illegal immigration, you're going to save billions of dollars a year in public schooling, the cost to our infrastructure, the child health care program, all the health, of course, all health care, ultimately Medicaid. You're going to save all that money, billions and billions of dollars. You're going to make up what you spend on that wall by stopping the influx of illegal cheap labor in this country. Just going to happen. Oh, and by the way, $20 billion worth of remittances that go to Mexico every year from illegal immigrants in the United States. I'd tax those by 40%, 50%. You want to be here illegally? We haven't deported you yet. You want to send money back home? Okay, but guess what? You're not here legally. We're going to tax it 40, 50%. That'll pay for the wall, too. Real quick. With us now, I'm delighted. My old friend, who we haven't talked to in a long time, Senator Rand Paul. Senator, great to have you with us, and Happy New Year.
Hey, Laura. Same to you. Thanks for having me.
How you feeling? How's the ribs? How's all that?
Each day a little bit better. I had a tough 4 to 6 weeks, and each day I'm getting a little bit better now. But I went through quite a bit. I had pneumonia twice, and quite a bit of pain. But I'm too tough to keep down for too long.
No, I was praying for you. My whole family was praying for you. What's the status of that neighbor of yours? Is he being charged? I confess I didn't follow all the ins and outs of that story. But
I don't think there's been a conclusion yet. I think there still will be in the next couple of weeks.
Did you just not let him lend a cup of sugar to him or something, or was it just did you not pick up his mail when he went out of town? I mean,
I think the bottom line is that nobody should be allowed to violently attack somebody, and the media had fun. The left-wing media were gleeful over seeing it happen and thought it was just sort of funny to report, why someone might attack someone. But I guess when I was, trouble breathing all night long, I really didn't think it was too funny. Sort of what his motives were.
I'm not laughing. Obviously, I was very concerned and was texting Sergio the entire time.
Yeah, no, I know you were. I'm just talking about some of the left-wing media. Kind of thought it was, a big hilarity. But no, we went through a lot. My wife and I really couldn't have made it without her being there for me.
Well, God bless you, and we're just glad you're back in the saddle, and just take it easy. I want to talk about the foreign aid issue, which you've been all over. I also want to talk about what is percolating out there, which is a deal for the so-called dreamers. Like the rest of us don't have dreams, but the dreamers, 800,000 people, all now adults, who were brought into the country, or 80% of them adults, who were brought in the country illegally and remained here. Obama gave them executive amnesty of sorts and let them work here and so forth. Now, for some reason, the Mitch McConnell wants to get a DACA deal done by the end of January, if possible. What would have to be in any deal, from your point of view, to ensure that 800,000 illegal immigrants, an electoral wave that would cross this country like a few others we've seen, 800,000 new voting citizens?
The first thing that I proposed is that they should not add to the immigration totals. So we admit about 1 million people a year. We're one of the more generous countries with immigration. It shouldn't be 1 million plus the 800,000. It should be 1 million minus the 800,000. And so you could do that. And what you could do is, if you did it over 4 or 5 years, you do background checks and you make sure that they're not criminals and haven't, committed any crimes, but then you'd subtract them from the immigration totals. That's the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do is you have to get something else in exchange. I think ending chain migration is one, and I think border security is a second one. The only thing I would caution on the wall is I'm still conservative even when it comes to money on a wall. They're talking about $40 billion for a wall. I think we have done. Somebody told me the other day. One of the senators mentioned that we have done. I think it's 2,700 miles of concrete barriers on highways for $2 billion. So there's somewhere got to be some kind of in between there, and we shouldn't just say, "Hey, whatever you want to spend, go ahead and spend it." We do need to still be fiscally conservative on how we build the wall and how we build the barriers. I've long said that you could have helicopter stations every 50 miles and have drone surveillance and have zero tolerance, and you wouldn't have to have a wall
that
for
only
the entire
works,
2,700 miles.
Senator, that only works. And every time I hear virtual wall, I'm like, okay, they're not serious about enforcing the border. And I know you are, but here's what happens in that regard. People cross the border, and they present themselves to immigration officials. And then they're held for 2 weeks, and then they're released. If you have a helicopter, they'll see them crossing. That doesn't.
No, you'd have to change that. You'd have to change it, and you'd have to have a zero tolerance policy, and you'd have to say that everyone picked up will be returned within 24 hours, if not immediately. And so nobody would be coming inland. No one would be given a ticket or a summons to appear 30 days later. Everyone would be reposited back across the border. And I think a lot of it is, even now, some are saying there's less of a problem because the Trump administration has shown that they have the wherewithal to actually send people back and not to let them come further in across the border. So some of it is showing that willpower. But I do think it can be a combination. I'm not against building walls. I'm just still not throwing out the fact that I'm fiscally conservative when it comes to a wall. We still need to look at and examine the amount on the wall.
What about the cost
and how we do it?
Yeah, but what about the cost of keeping them here? The CBO numbers on that were shocking.
I agree. I think you made a good point there.
And they said $20 billion in services to all the illegal immigrants and $20 billion out of the country just to Mexico.
The other thing that should come with the DACA deal, if there is a DACA deal, is that really we need to select who comes to this country. It has been estimated that if anybody could come, 700 million people would come to this country next month. So since so many people want to come to this country, why don't we select out for the best of the best, the most patriotic, the most pro-American, and not admitting people through a diversity lottery who want to plow down citizens in New York City on a terrorist spree. So I think getting rid of the diversity lottery, making merit-based immigration, having great scrutiny for those who want to come to our country, visit-wise or to live in our country, we can do a great deal more, and I think the DACA deal allows there to be some leverage in finally getting the Democrats to agree to some of these things.
Let's move on to what Jeff Sessions announced today. Then we're going to get into the foreign aid issue. Jeff Sessions announced he's rescinding that Obama-era directive for the federal U.S. attorneys to back off marijuana enforcement in states with legalized pot. What Jeff Sessions says now, he's going to leave it to the discretion of federal officials in our states and remove that basic advisory against bringing cases involving those states where marijuana is legal. I know you're a libertarian. I am not. I look at the scourge of drug use and know too many people who started on marijuana and ended up either dead on opioids or sticking a needle in their arm. But tell us where you are on this new decision.
Well, the first thing I would say is just because I believe in freedom doesn't mean I'm in favor of drugs. I agree with you, drugs are a scourge. I would say with the heroin and the opioid problem, really most of it's actually come in the beginning from prescription drugs. People who were prescribed opioids and then went to heroin. 4 out of 5 people on heroin started out with prescription opioids. With regard to the federal government coming in and controverting state law, on marijuana, it's going to be quite difficult because some of these states not only have been doing medical marijuana for a decade or more, now some of them are doing recreational. It'll be virtually impossible. I think it's a mistake for the Department of Justice to do this, but it'll be virtually impossible. They would have to send an army and federal troops in there. There's no way it's going to change.
So you think state law should preempt federal drug laws?
I think what you should do is, since the states have decided to legalize this, we should get rid of any federal encumbrances that make it difficult to have a legal business. For example, right now,
what if they do it to child pornography? What if they do it with child pornography and states decide, well, it's okay to have an age of consent lowered?
Right. The IRS currently says that if you run a medical marijuana industry in Colorado, you cannot deduct the wages of your workers. So what happens is many of these entities either don't file federal taxes or have been disputing their federal taxes for a decade, and the federal government hasn't gotten anything from these. The state government taxes them at the sale point of marijuana, and so they've actually, in Colorado and different states, collected millions and millions of dollars. And people are looking at the crime statistics, but actually most of the studies that I've seen have not seen an increase in crime, have actually seen crime continuing its downward trend. So, I don't know, there are arguments back and forth for it. I think in all practical purposes, no matter what the Department of Justice decides to do, it's practically impossible for them to come in and try to overturn Colorado or California or Nevada or Washington or Oregon law.
Well, the cost, and you're a medical professional, but the medical costs of legalization and the increase in pot usage by those from the ages of 12 to 17, the American Academy of Pediatrics, which they don't really take a position on legalization, they just did the studies of it. It's skyrocketing, and that's what paving the way for legalization does. So it changes the young brain.
Well, I think the bigger problem, the bigger problem, Laura, I would say, is not marijuana; it's prescription opioids. And if you look at the problem of heroin and the addiction to prescription opioids, this is devastating our country. More people are dying from car accidents, are dying from opioids than car accidents.
Well, it's freedom now.
There really has been
if people want to take it, why can't they take it? You're a libertarian. Take opioids. So what? If marijuana is legal, why not opioids?
No. Well, the thing is it's legal for doctors to prescribe a whole host of things, but it's not advisable to sometimes prescribe let's say your kid gets his wisdom teeth out, should we give them 100 OxyContin? So people have been over-prescribing these things, and then also the drug company, there's Purdue Pharma came in the 1990s and said, it's not addictive, and so they sold this, and they actually ended up paying a fine, a $630 million fine. There's a great book on this called Dreamland, and in it they talk about how a lot of people got hooked because of doctors doing the wrong thing. So it's not really a freedom issue. It's actually a medical issue on whether it's advisable to prescribe OxyContin and highly addictive drugs for long-term pain control.
Yeah, well, China's dumping in fentanyl like it's gone out of style, and you take fentanyl once and you're hooked. And so this is I know it's not the cool position. I'm not worried about being the cool cat, but I think this is going to go down as one of the worst decisions for our country and our overall well-being. Forget what it means for money or people making money. Billionaires are investing in pot fields, and I just think as it affects our country, our well-being, our children, brain development, all of it, it will go down as a disastrous decision. I'm not for locking people up. I'm not saying people lock people up for recreational use, but I am saying that the tacit approval of pot use and the glamorization of pot use is going to ensure that we have more addicts and more people in serious mental health decline. That's my concern, Senator. I'll let you close it out.
I think, though, if you looked at the problem, you'd probably, if we looked at it and tried to weigh which is a bigger problem, that or the opioid problem, I think it's really the prescription opioid problem that is. But they're different problems, and they aren't necessarily the same problem. And the opioid problem has a direct linkage to the heroin problem. And the addiction to opioids is well proven and well accepted, and marijuana being addictive isn't really so much accepted.
Well, 9% of those who begin to use marijuana become addicted, and of the young people. And if you use it daily, 17% become addicted. That's not nothing. It's something. But, Senator, we're not going to agree on this, but we are so happy that you're doing better and so happy that you're back. We need your voice out there, and Pakistan is going to get a big cut in aid. I couldn't be happier, and the UN is going to get less money. I'm happy. You must be ecstatic about that.
Well, we have a bill, actually, that we're going to reintroduce next week that would take the money we send to Pakistan, about $2 billion, and put it directly into an infrastructure fund.
Great.
I haven't met anybody. I've traveled the country. I don't meet anybody that thinks we should be sending the money to Pakistan.
None.
I meet a lot of people that say, why can't we fix our roads and bridges here?
Bingo. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. You have to come on TV with me when you drop that. So we'll talk to you offline about that. Say hi to all the staff and Sergio and all the guys and Kelly, and I'm just so glad you're on the men. Senator Rand Paul, don't go away. All right, we have a lot more to get to on the Laura Ingraham Show. Ingram Angle tonight. Make sure to tune in.
Thanks for listening to the Laura Ingraham Show podcast. Download new episodes every week at podcastone.com. That's podcastone.com.
Podcast One has new shows on our new app. Check out all the cool features to help you explore our exciting new programming, like America's Lakers podcast with Jay Moore, So Random with Corinne Olympios, Attack Each Day, The Harbaugh's podcast, Not Just Sports with Susie Schuster and Rich Eisen, and Sessions with Randy Jackson, as well as your old favorites like The Lady Gang, Steve Austin, Shaquille O'Neal, and Adam Carolla. Get the new Podcast One app in the App Store, Google Play, or podcastone.com.